Good evening, Orlando. I want to thank the Interfaith Council of Central Florida, as well as Mayor Dyer's Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Commission for their leadership in hosting this event every single year. I'm filled with gratitude first for having the opportunity to serve this community as your elected Florida State Representative for House District 49, but also gratitude for having the opportunity of being here with you all today and sharing this precious space physically, virtually, and spiritually, all in honor of the paramount life example Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. has bestowed upon us. Thanks to his life, dedicated to the attainment of peace, freedom, justice, and equality, we can all congregate here to be together as one true family. And as we come together in preparation for MLK Jr. Day on January 17th, I can't help but fully embrace one of the central themes here tonight: Dr. King's beloved community. It is a global vision in which all people can share in the wealth of the earth. In the beloved community, poverty, hunger, and homelessness will not be tolerated because international standards of human decency will not allow it. Racism and all forms of discrimination, bigotry, and prejudice will be replaced by an all-inclusive spirit of fellowship. Thanks to Dr. King's vision, we can all stand proud, as I do, here today as a proud Orlando LGBTQ Latino who fully embraces the same humanity and notion of MLK's beloved community, the same urgency in our quest for peace and justice that drives our shared hopes and dreams, no matter our race, color, religion, sex, national origin, age, ability, sexual orientation, or gender identity. In Orlando, you can see us building toward that beloved community. We see it every day. Each of the many religions and faith traditions we have represented here tonight and throughout Central Florida understand that as humans, we are caretakers of one another who possess the shared higher values and virtues of love, gratitude, compassion, and peace. Each of our own families, whether chosen or created in our journey, walk alongside us in times of happiness and grief. But what is our role? Each one of us in bringing us all closer to MLK's vision of beloved community. To understand our role and the challenges we face, we can look to Dr. King's 1964 Nobel Prize lecture. We just heard his words just moments ago, in which he describes spectacular strides in science and technology that humans have used these advancements to fly in the air like birds and swim in the sea like fish. And yet the richer we have become materially, the poorer we have become morally and spiritually, due to the fact that we have not learned the simple art of living together. Something that rings true today. Dr. King describes this problem of spiritual and moral lag as manifesting itself into three larger problems, each one inextricably bound to the other. Racial injustice, poverty, and war. Our struggle continues today. And it's not just the struggle against these problems that continues, but Dr. King's prescribed method to confront them: nonviolence. Nonviolence as a way to confront injustice and inequality. Nonviolence, which he calls a powerful and just weapon. The words from his 1964 Nobel Prize lecture appear to be speaking directly to us in 2022. We will take direct action against injustice despite the failure of governmental and other official agencies to act first. We will not obey unjust laws or submit to unjust practices. We will do this peacefully, openly, cheerfully, because our aim is to persuade. We adopt the means of nonviolence because our end is a community in peace with itself. We will try to persuade with our words, but if our words fail, we will persuade with our acts. We see Dr. King's wisdom on how to confront injustice is still being followed by civil rights movements of today. We saw nonviolent Black Lives Matter resistors here in Orlando and across the nation and the world in response to the murder of George Floyd, who in their protests continue the legacy of Dr. King. We saw nonviolent resistors taking to the streets in solidarity with those fighting for freedom in Cuba, and those nonviolent resistors last week in Jacksonville who came to a public press conference to speak truth to their elected leaders. The Orlando 10 for the 49. 10 brave Orlando nonviolent resistors were arrested for refusing to leave the office of their elected U.S. Senator until they could meet to demand gun safety and LGBTQ rights in the immediate aftermath of Pulse nightclub. I will continue to defend their constitutionally protected First Amendment freedoms and oppose unjust laws like the ones passed in Florida last year that seek to silence the voices of nonviolent resistors like these and many more. But let's also remember that just as there were those in 1964 who opposed the movement to end racial injustice, there are those who are opposed today. Again, from Dr. King's Nobel Prize remarks, the American people revealed great maturity by overwhelmingly rejecting a presidential candidate who had become identified with extremism, racism, and retrogression. The voters of our nation rendered a telling blow to the radical right. They defeated those elements in our society which seek to pit white against Negro and lead the nation down a dangerous fascist path. It is once again crystal clear how these struggles continue today. But let's understand that today's opponents of racial justice may look similar to those from 1964, but they may also look very different or sound different. We should ask ourselves, what would Dr. King think about the effort to ban critical race theory from Florida public schools? Something proponents of the effort know very well is not actually taught in Florida public schools. Would he see it as a way to stop the indoctrination of our nation's youth with hatred towards one another and towards America? Or would he see it as a thinly veiled attempt to politicize and whitewash the teaching of Black history in our schools? MLK, in his Nobel Peace remarks, he quotes the philosopher Alfred North Whitehead, who says, "We live in a day when civilization is shifting its basic outlook, a major turning point in history where the presuppositions on which society is structured are being analyzed, sharply challenged, and profoundly changed." So let's ask ourselves today, in 2022, shouldn't our institutions be analyzed, sharply challenged, and profoundly changed if they aren't set up to work for everyone? Today, some may call the need to analyze, shift, or rethink assumptions as being woke. Something that should be stopped dead in its tracks. MLK explains, the great masses of people are determined to end the exploitation of their races and land. They are awake and moving towards their goal like a tidal wave. Are they woke or are they awake? Or are we shifting our basic outlooks, as Dr. King said? Would Dr. King agree with politicians of today who say diversity, equity, and inclusion training is a ploy to smuggle an ideology into the workplace? Or would he see diversity, equity, and inclusion training as a way to help us understand how to create a workplace environment where all employees, including people of color, including LGBTQ workers, and all others, feel supported, able to grow, thrive, and advance? Fighting against racial injustice, poverty, and war is not our only role as Orlandans in furthering Dr. King's legacy. As I reflect on Dr. King's legacy, I can't help but remember what our community endured after the attack at Pulse nightclub, how we responded. We saw the values of inclusion of LGBTQ people on full display, a fundamental concept of Dr. King's beloved community, inclusion. So many did what they could to bring about love, gratitude, compassion, and peace to everyone. What I saw in this community's response to the tragedy was divine. And I say that as someone who identifies as more agnostic. Even though I was raised Catholic, I had the privilege of seeing the very good work of the Interfaith Council of Central Florida. And what I saw was the perfect example of how, whether it's through our religion, our faith, or our own labeled or unlabeled spirituality, like my own, when we show one another love, gratitude, compassion, and peace, we can find the divinity within, which can help us overcome that spiritual and moral lag Dr. King referred to, and in doing so, truly learn the simple art of living together. These virtues are not exclusive to the altars or houses of worship, but they're virtues that exist within us all. Dr. King fought hard against the foes of hatred and discrimination, and he did so bravely with a loving, compassionate, and grateful heart that brought peace to many who experienced injustice. He was just a person, just like you and me, like all of us. But what brought him closer to the divine, what sparked that fire in his voice and enveloped that holy aura that still lives in us, it all arose from his unwavering power of compassion. So I ask again, what is our role, each one of us, in bringing us all closer to MLK's vision of beloved community? If we start every day with the commitment to improve the lives of those around us, if we begin to stand against the oppression of marginalized communities around our country, if we see ourselves reflected in our neighbors, treating them with the same respect, dignity, and humility we all deserve, I assure you that we will be walking together towards a more peaceful world. But the peace Dr. King spoke of is a peace that cuts the chains of oppression, a peace that ends systemic racism and uproots hatred and bigotry, a peace which can only be won through us, so we can become a community at peace with itself. Dr. King's dream lives not only in the progress we've seen, but also in our collective commitment to fight for equality of opportunity, the fight for our freedom to exist without fear of hatred, discrimination, or violence, so we can fulfill our divine promise. We can build a dream Dr. King would be proud of, where all people have the freedom to be healthy, prosperous, and safe, the freedom to be, the freedom to pray, and the freedom to love. A world where love wins, and our hearts live free, free at last. I am committed to continuing to build that dream alongside each and every one of you as we build our Orlando beloved community together. Thank you. I leave you in peace.